the deadly martial arts of the black and the white lotus. Someday I'ma be the POTUS, you'll still be a giant scrotum, and I'll be at the podium, and you'll be sodium salty. Your girl gon' call me to get balls deep.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG, down there, decks, YouTube, all that. I actually got a deck for you today, but it's not an original deck from SBMTG. Today I'm reporting, I guess, on a deck. A lot of people want to know about Grixis. What's up with Grixis control in this format? What's the best Grixis deck? Well, there is a deck that's been showing up in results pretty consistently here. I actually got second place at Grand Prix Tokyo. A lot of good players in Japan, too. That is no joke. So, and it actually had a bit of a showing, too, at Grand Prix New York. I believe it was in the top 16 of that tournament. And it's been showing up at Opens and such, too. And it's pretty much always the list I'm going to show you today. Let me start with the creatures, as usual, but it's important to start with the creatures this time because I get to show you the two cards that I feel like the deck is definitely built around. It's sort of top down from these two cards. The deck works around Kalitas and Goblin Dark Dwellers. We're going to actually play a 4 of both of these cards, including the Kalitas. That is how important it is to the structure of the deck. Kalitas and Goblin Dark Dwellers are great on-curve play. In a second turn or third turn, you'll play a piece of removal. Then you'll play your Kalitas on turn 4, ideally. Turn 5, ideally, you'll play your Goblin Dark Dwellers, replay that 2 or 3 mana piece of removal, and get a token off of Kalitas. Also, you'll exile the creature you remove. So, in one turn, you get a 4/4 menace, a 2/2 zombie, and you get to recast a spell that will remove and exile a creature. The deck plays 4 of copies of both to be as consistent as possible in curving them out. It's important that you do that, but at any point in the game that you play these things, they're really, really good. Kalitas is great against all the tokens decks in the format because with his lifelink, you can effectively block a token, kill it, and then blank the damage from like 2 or 3 other tokens. That's always amazing. Kalitas, very good against a board of tokens, and also good against the Aristocrats deck. Pretty much just shuts it down. Last thing I'll point out here is something very important to, I think, the philosophy of the deck. Both of these cards allow you to sort of do 2 things in one turn. Again, just a super extra value and initiative out of all of your turns. You know, very, very proactive plays here, and sometimes can play reactively. But mostly proactive plays we're getting a ton of value out of. And again, they sort of make it feel like you're casting more than one spell in a turn. With Goblin Dark Dwellers, you're doing exactly that. You get a 4/4 menace, and you get to recast a spell. With Kalitas, you get 2 spells because every time you cast a removal spell, you also get a creature. And it just so happens that these 2 cards work very well with one another. As far as the other creatures go, we're going to start with a 4 of copy of Jace, Vryn's Prodigy. Yeah, he's in the deck, sorry about that, but notice how much his price has come down. I'm sure that's still just a whisper of a dream. $45 is still expensive. But he was twice that just a couple of months ago, so we're doing okay as far as Jace goes. For the last few months that he's in the format. But Jace, very good with Kalitas for similar reasons to Goblin Dark Dwellers. Bunch of spells that we can recast with Jace, most of which are removal, and will all benefit us if we have a Kalitas in play. But of course, it's good to recast spells regardless. And early game draws us cards, and we don't mind discarding cards because later we can recast them with either of our 8 things that recast spells. And to finish off the creatures, we'll play 2 copies of Dragonlord Silumgar. This is also like playing more than one spell in a turn. You know, you get a big flying creature and a control magic from one play. So again, just extra value out of our plays is always good. Dragonlord Silumgar is really coming into his own, man. People are really starting to play the crap out of this guy because he is amazing. You know, he survives Languish, he survives Grasp of Darkness, he's immune to Ultimate Price. So lots of things going for this creature right now in this format. He dodges a lot of important removal. And that's great because he'll steal a guy and it's really hard for them to get their guy back because he's really tough to kill right now. We're just going to play one Planeswalker, and that one Planeswalker is a copy of Chandra, Flamecaller. When I first was messing around with the deck, I dipped it 1 copy of Kalitas down to 3 and bumped it up to 2 copies of Chandra. Thought that would work, but the deck really just does want its Kalitas that bad. It works around Jace, Goblin Dark Dwellers, and Kalitas. I mean, the deck has to have 4s of all those cards because it's what the deck is built around, to be honest. But still, Chandra Flamecaller wanted to be a 2 of. The deck list is very, very tight. But even as a 1 of, it does a lot for us. You know, it'll usually come down, sweep the board for 3, and that'll leave itself Goblin Dark Dwellers, Kalitas in play. That's awesome. It'll also sweep any tokens, because tokens decks are the scourge of Standard right now. And for any non-token creatures that we sweep, we'll get zombies for each of those. So Chandra's just a really good late game play. And if you can pull off the curve of like 3 mana removal, Kalitas, Goblin Dark Dwellers, and then a Chandra, you have probably won the game, because that's one of the dumbest turn sequences ever. It's just really hard to actually make that curve work. Aside from everything I've said there, Chandra is just a super solid card, can end the game by herself, playing a ton of removal, so often we can just keep the board relatively clean and just swing in for 6 a turn, win the game that way. We can also draw a bunch of cards, and we don't care that we discard cards because we recast them later, whatever. So everything Chandra does, super awesome. I'd like to play 2, again, I just don't know where the slot is for it. 19 spells, most of them removal, so let's run through those real quick and talk about what they do for us. 3 copies of Fiery Impulse in the deck. We have to be able to take out these small beginning of the game creatures because we're not playing, I'll go ahead and spoil this for you, we're not playing Languish in the deck. In fact, the only sweeper that we're playing is technically Chandra and also one of Radiant Flames. But we're not playing Languish in the deck because we don't want to sweep our own Kalitas before he gets buffed, and we don't want to sweep our own Goblin Dark Dwellers either. A lot of our best creatures start with 4 toughness, so we don't want to sweep them off the board. The deck plays no Languish. So that in mind, and Goblin Dark Dwellers couldn't recast a Languish. That can sometimes be a problem. We want to maximize the value of Dark Dwellers by playing nothing but, basically, cards that he can recast. So that leads us to a lot more removal than we'd normally play because we don't have a panic button, basically. So we're going to play 3 of Fiery Impulse. Let me start over with that. To take out sort of, we need something that takes out things on every slot of the curve, and we don't want to get behind in the early game. So something like Fiery Impulse can take out pretty much 90% of the creatures that they're going to play in the first couple of turns and really help you, not get run over for the most part. Just a good card. Also, Spell Mastery is going to be fulfilled. We have a ton of spells in the deck. We'll keep going though. 2 copies of Grasp of Darkness in the deck. And some people would want to do like 3 Grasp of Darkness and 1 Ultimate Price. But in this deck, we're going to go 2 Grasp, 2 Ultimate Price. Ultimate Price is really, really good in this format. There's not much that it doesn't just outright kill. It kills Kalitas and it kills Goblin Dark Dwellers, kills Jace, kills, most of the creatures in our deck at least. But it also kills like Sylvan Advocates and a bunch of other stuff. Ultimate Price is really good right now. And Grasp is always premium. I mean, it's 2 mana, kill a guy with 4 toughness, always going to be good. So these are just 2 great pieces of 2 mana removal. As far as 3 mana removal, we're going to play 3 copies of Ruinous Path in the deck. I've seen a couple of writers, more than one, call this the best piece of removal in the format. We see a ton of Planeswalkers right now. Lots of different decks play them, from Control to the sort of mid-range Super Frenzy kind of decks that we see. There's a few of those, actually. White-Black Control will play Planeswalkers. They're everywhere. Green-White Tokens, Planeswalkers. So Ruinous Path is very good right now because it's always going to find a great target, and it's unconditional, which is sweet. Late in the game, too, this is a creature. So just everything about Ruinous Path is great in this slightly slower format where a 3-mana piece of sorcery removal can actually shine. Here's that one of Radiant Flames I was talking about. Another reason to play 3 colors, and again, we want to sweep things up to 3 toughness, but nothing higher. So Radiant Flames is a perfect card for us. We'll play more of them in the sideboard, definitely. We'll fill out the playset, as a matter of fact. But in the main board, we have enough removal to keep the board fairly clean and outclass any other, drops that aggro is going to play in a 3rd, 4th, 5th turn. By the time we get our 4 and 5 mana creatures in, we're going to outclass pretty much everything they have. So, we don't have to worry too much about sweeping the board, but Radiant Flames is a good option to have, especially against tokens decks, Cryptolith Rites decks that go super fast, mono-white aggro, a lot of stuff. So we're going to at least pack the 1 main deck option here. We're going to play a 3 of Kolaghan's Command, which is an all-star card in this deck. Let me tell you, this forces discards, kills small creatures. This can kill Pyromancer's Goggles or tapped Hedron Archives, I never mention Hedron Archive when I talk about artifacts in the format. That is a very important artifact in the format. We can kill that if they, don't have the mana to basically tap it and sack it and draw the cards. So that can also be important. But it also resurrects Goblin Dark Dwellers, Jaces that they managed to kill, Kalitas that they managed to kill. Great when we can get a Goblin Dark Dwellers back with this, by the way. So just one of the best spells in the format to recast with Dark Dwellers. I should also bring that up. And, it's a dream ticket. Goblin Dark Dwellers, Jace, and Kolaghan's Command. Just 3 cards that go super duper well together. Being able to recast Kol's Command is just absolutely ridiculous. One of the best value spells in the format that doesn't see as much play as it should. This is a modern darling. But at the same time, it just doesn't see as much standard play as it really ought to. This is the deck for it because we can recast it over and over and pick different modes and stuff. So really, really versatile card here. Well, that's everything that can remove creatures, but we are playing a couple of other things in the main deck, starting with a 2 of Transgress the Mind. I'd like this to be a 3 of, but I don't have the space. It's really restricted deck space here. And yeah, you could take out like a Fiery Impulse if you're not facing as much aggro in your format. At your F&M, for instance, and put in a Transgress if you're facing more control, more Planeswalker-focused decks. I just think Transgress, I've said this before, I think it's one of the better cards in the whole format. I think it's one of the most powerful uncommons in the format for sure. I love Transgress, gets rid of all like 98% of viable threats in this format, other than like Sylvan Advocate. You know, just, other than that, it takes out a lot of the very important cards in the format before you even have to worry about them, and it takes them out forever. I love Transgress. To finish off the main deck here, we'll play 3 copies of Read the Bones. We need some kind of card advantage in this deck. This card works very well. Read the Bones is a favorite of a lot of people. Just card advantage is always good. And it's funny that in a blue deck, the only actual card advantage we're playing is this thing right here. Better than Painful Truce because Goblin Dark Dwellers can recast this. You know, Painful Truce you could recast, but it would be 0. You draw no cards. But this, you'll always get to recast with Dark Dwellers, making it a little bit better than Painful Truce. The deck plays 26 lands because they want to make sure that it gets all of its drops, basically. I mean, we have to get to 5 no matter what. Basically, that's the philosophy of the deck. So let's play a fairly high land count to make sure we get the drops that we need. Here's the sideboard right here. Some things to talk about. More decks, more decks in this format are starting to play Dragon Master Outcast out of the sideboard. It's fairly good against tokens decks, keeping up with some of their output and outclassing their output too. That's important. Also, it's hard to remove forever because we've got Kolaghan's command in the deck in a million ways to recast Kolaghan's command. So Dragon Master Outcast, very good late game, especially with being hard to remove forever. Duress is just great against control decks in the format. It's also good against, again, tokens decks because we can take out the Planeswalkers in them, which are really the things that make those decks tick. Just really good against anything with a lot of walkers, honestly, and good against blue-red goggles because it can take out the goggles and any spells in the deck too. So Duress is awesome against a lot of things, and I wouldn't mind it in the main deck. How many times am I going to say that? In this deck tech, there's no room. There's a 3 of Fevered Visions in the board. You may have noticed that. That's probably the weirdest card in the board. But decks that have access to blue and red are playing this in the board against control decks. You know, control decks very often going to have the 4 or more cards in their hand. In this case, you know, you can just win the game this way over the course of, a few turns, basically. So we're going to do the extra damage to them every turn, basically. And if they can't win the game in a few turns, it's going to be a problem for them. I was a little surprised that the deck doesn't play Exquisite Firecraft. Let me just say that. A card that a lot of people are playing, takes out Planeswalkers, deals a huge chunk to the face, takes out big creatures. We can recast it with 2 different cards. I was just very surprised that Firecraft didn't show up somewhere in the 75. But anyway, here's your power rankings for the deck. I've got the deck ranked at a 70. And it does a lot of things very well. Very versatile deck with a lot of tricks. Some fair amount of synergy here between the creatures and the spells. Mostly because our creatures can recast the spells, and Kalitas has synergy with the 2 creatures. And all the removal in the deck, so we've got some amount of synergy here. And resiliency is very high because we're casting really important stuff in turns 4, turns 5, turns 6. Really huge splashy things that get us back in the game. And things that recast spells, which is always a form of resiliency. You know, we can basically get extra mileage out of any removal, resiliency. We can put more tokens onto the battlefield with Kalitas, resiliency. We can gain life with Kalitas, resiliency. So if we can get a little bit later on into the game, we've got a lot of ways of hanging on and turning the tide. Bad news is here, the deck is going to cost you about $450. Very expensive deck in this format right now. Not bad when you consider that, a couple of months ago the decks were $800 with the land base and with Jace being $100 a pop almost. So, $450 is still a very expensive deck, but not as bad as it was a couple of months ago. I keep having to tell myself that, and all of you, and I'm sorry about that. That's all I've got for now, but I do have a couple of projects in the work I want to tell you about. Not only all the deck techs that I've been babbling about, including mono green triple tech, which is coming up soon, Crawling Sensation, a bunch of other stuff, like a million other decks. Blue Lamog, that's also coming soon. Matter of fact, let me know what you want to see, mono green triple tech or Blue Lamog next. That'll be the next deck tech. Tell me in the comments. But I've also got 2 projects that I'm working on right now. The State of the Brunion. This will be the 4th State of Standard video. That's where I give you the top 5 decks in Standard, go through the list, and give you a sort of how-to as to how the deck works for the top 5 decks in Standard. And the other thing I'm going to try and do is try my hand again at the top 5 cards that we want in Eldritch Moon. I'm going to do a part 2 of that. A lot of people wanted it. And that video probably has more dislikes than like any video I've ever done because I messed up a rules question or 2. And I made a very broken card or two. So we're going to try our hand at it again and give you some of the things you suggested in the comments, you know. So we're going to have a legendary werewolf. There's going to be a Liliana version, you know. So going to try my hand at doing that again and not screwing it up this time. That's really all I have for now. Appreciate you guys sticking with me through the entire video. If you enjoyed the content, do the things that the people on YouTube tell you to do. Like it, share it. That nobody does that, but that'd be awesome if you did that. Comment, talk to me. Let me know how you feel about this and all the stuff coming up. And then sub if you're new. I'm Dev from SBMTG, as usual. Thanks for watching, my wizard. Sincerely, thanks for watching.